Buffalo's a really cool place to be. It's a little bit of a bubble. You know, we're sheltered from a lot of the ups and downs that the rest of the country, I feel like, deals with. College doesn't really have the value proposition that it used to, and you're seeing that.
Glad you brought this up.
You saw the explosion of higher education institutions, and market was oversaturated. Having a cigar is, I think, just a great meditative experience because you're sitting there for 45 minutes, an hour. It's a commitment. A coach shouldn't always be mentoring. A coach needs to equip you with the ability to do it yourself. They're not just talking at you and giving, they're forcing your brain.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Flow Syndicate podcast, where, as you know, we talk all things mindset, performance, and leadership. And we have a great guest today, Dustin Snyder, founder of Wayforward. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Oh, this is going to be a good time because, you know, from fellow coach to another, this is the first time having a guest on who, you know, comes from a similar line of work. So I think there's going to be some really cool and interesting conversations and topics that we can discuss today.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so, you know, as most people know, most of the guests that I've had on the podcast so far, you know, are from the Buffalo community. And tell us a little bit about Buffalo and your background and, you know, how you like the city and, you know, things that you've done so far here.
Sure. Buffalo's changed a lot since I've been here. I went to undergrad here in Buffalo, and years later came back for my MBA. And it's a very different city than it was when I was in my early 20s coming out of undergrad. There's definitely been a resurgence. I think there's a significant renaissance going on in this, you know, this old Rust Belt city. We still have a lot of things that we grapple with on a local level, I think, but Buffalo's a really cool place to be. It's a little bit of a bubble. You know, we're sheltered from a lot of the ups and downs that the rest of the country, I feel like, deals with. And it's nice because we've got this lag here, and I think you can see the other things happening, not just in the rest of the country, but in the rest of the world. And we've got a little bit more time to prepare for some of those trends sometimes. But I love Buffalo. I love the climate. I love the snow. I love the seasons. I've worked all over the world, and I've never had a good reason to uproot. I've loved so many other places, but I've never found anywhere that beats Buffalo on a sum total basis.
Oh yeah. And you know what I've noticed too is anybody who moves away from Buffalo, whether it's for work or personal reasons, do you notice they always come back eventually?
Yeah, a lot of the time.
A lot of the time they do. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, it's a special place. And you know, where we are here now, you know, we just got back from a recent cigar event where, you know, had some whiskey and had some cigars. And where did your kind of passion for, or when did you pick up cigars?
When did I pick up cigars? I think my in-laws are really into cigars, and I think I started to really appreciate them when they started teaching me about them. And then I made a friend a few years back through being I had a business years ago in the hospitality industry. And through that, I made a friend who is like a walking encyclopedia of cigars. And his name's
always nice.
Tommy Farrell. And he has the best boutique cigar shop, not just in Western New York, but I think the whole Northeast. And he has taught me more than I ever knew there was to know about cigars, and I'm sure he's forgotten more than I know. But really helped me dial in my tastes and know what I was looking for and know what I enjoyed. And I think I've gotten a lot of other people into it too. But having a cigar is, I think, just a great meditative experience because you're sitting there for 45 minutes, an hour.
Agreed.
You know, it's a commitment. And for you to, sit down and not only have that sensory experience, but usually share it with somebody else, or if you're doing it solo, on your back porch, it's just a nice thing to do.
And for our audience, Dustin was generous enough to hook me up with what we got in our hands here. What are we drinking?
We are drinking High West Rendezvous. It's a rye whiskey. For the price point that it's at, it's a phenomenal whiskey. The distillery is out of Park City, Utah. And as you know, I have my own podcast, and I'm in talks with them to sponsor that. So
How cool.
I figured if I drink High West on my podcast, we might as well drink it on yours.
Oh, I love it. How about Scotch? You ever get into it?
I like Scotch. I love Scotch. Not super knowledgeable about it as much as I am about American whiskeys, but I'm a fan, and I like drinking Scotch whenever I'm in Europe because it's so much cheaper over there.
Yeah. Oh, I know it is. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, man. So tell us a little bit about, Wayforward, being a founder of a company, a fellow entrepreneur. What has that process, been like from starting a company and where you are now?
The process was, I'd say that the key to beginning was to really understand what my process was in bringing value to an organization. So I had to sit down and systematize what I was doing in-house as an executive, whether that was in my healthcare days or my manufacturing days, and really understand what I was doing and have that self-awareness to understand those steps when that's not always something that somebody plans intentionally. You kind of evolve it over time. What I was doing, why those things were working, how to articulate that to a client who doesn't know me, who hasn't worked with me, who, they're just getting referred to me or they're seeing me online, so that they can trust that I know what I'm talking about. Because in the days of social media now, everybody's a coach, so it's hard to distinguish. Is this person actually giving me good advice, or are they a charlatan? And so making sure that not only did I have my process locked down, but I was able to communicate what that was to clients and why it's going to work, and how it's worked in the past. So I think that was the beginning point, was to systematize the work itself and have that proven process that I could communicate to clients. And then now, it's working. I've got a whole pile of testimonials from happy clients. I've got results, case studies out the wazoo. I've written probably 20 of them. I've got 50 more sitting in outline form in my Google Drive that I need to get up on the website. But it's getting to a point where I need to determine, how do I scale this? Because my revenue is entirely tied to my presence with my clients. And how do I take what I'm doing and repeat it, scale it, make it so that, it's something that is under its own steam instead of reliant on me and my time and energy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so. What a lot of the online entrepreneurs do, and as you mentioned, for example, right, it's based on your presence, your being there. They got do-it-yourself services, done-with-you services, and done-for-you services. So, for example, right, a do-it-yourself might be an online course that you offer, right? So somebody can go through that. Done with you would be they have access to a course, but then also some coaching, some one-on-one support. And then the third one, like a done-for-you model, is like the agency model, where if somebody wants to go to a digital marketer and say, I want you to run my ads for me, the client does nothing, right? It's just you're doing it for them. So that might potentially even be an idea too. Just thinking about it is, a coaching business is nice, but to also maybe have training coupled to that where it's a complete do-it-yourself, where it's like, hey, listen, maybe we could do a lower tiered pricing model on it, but here's all the stuff that we work with our clients on, but here it is in a condensed course, just not the extra support that some of my clients who can pay more, they have the luxury of getting.
Yeah, that's something that I took a step toward last summer, was to create an online course for one of the very particular issues that I kept seeing in a lot of clients around recruitment and retention. There's so many companies experiencing turnover, having trouble finding the right people for their organization from an employee standpoint. And so taking that, and really every engagement to that point had been bespoke, but this problem has proven solutions, and they'd been working for clients. Like I've had clients featured in Buffalo Business First for how much they've turned around their recruitment and retention in their organizations, and that's really cool. So I sat down with my marketing partners and said, this is working really well, but we only have so much capacity to do this. We are repeating this in the done for you model with our clients over and over. Let's, for lack of a better term, let's, bottle this up and give people an educational model at a lower price point if they feel like they can do it themselves. And that's worked out really cool. So we've got this online masterclass that people can download it's got like 30-something video-based modules for training and all these downloadable resources and how-tos. And that's been cool, but there's something about having a third party come into your organization. The systemic workforce issues that I deal with. The coaching comes out of it a lot of time in the action plan to help the leadership teams deal with this new reality. But the systemic workforce issues that I work on, it requires an objective set of eyes, and it's hard for an internal person to really master that unless it's the right person. So the class is good for the right, like hiring managers and HR professionals that have the right skill set and the right character, but it can be difficult for somebody in-house to really kind of read the label from inside the bottle, so to speak.
Yeah. What do you think of all of this? Because you brought up a good point of saying, everybody nowadays online who has a social media presence is a coach. What do you think of all this social media marketing, using these mediums now of, Instagram, Facebook, boosted posts, paying for advertising? Is this like a new world to you based on what you've done in the past, or have you gotten very familiar with it now and said, this is just how business is being conducted now?
Yeah. I had to get good at social when it was a little bit of a different animal. So I opened a sporting venue downtown here in Buffalo back in 2015, and I very serendipitously sold the business right before the pandemic. But back then, Instagram was a little bit of a different animal, but those B2C social models were important in hospitality and, an entertainment venue. And so I kind of had to learn it, and it was a little bit of trial and error and figuring it out. But for me now, I do maintain a bit of a presence on those more B2C platforms like Instagram and TikTok and things. But I'd say that primarily where I dabble in social is LinkedIn, which can be a little bit of a sanctimonious, self-righteous place when it comes to an online community. But I find that even though a lot of my decision makers aren't there, like when I come into an organization usually through like a chief operating officer, sometimes a CHRO, they're not usually really super active on LinkedIn.
Right, the C-suite. Yeah.
But the rest of the organization often is. So, it helps me to lay that foundation of trust in having a presence there so people can Google me and check me out and say, what is this guy talking about? How does he see these issues? How is he approaching these things? And I'm in a really interesting spot where I have to be able to speak to the frontline employee and the board in the same communication. And I have to be the same person, and they have to know that they're getting the same person, and I'm not speaking out of both sides of my mouth, or one person with one group and one person with another. And I have to be able to understand the issues from both perspectives simultaneously. So having that online presence, I think while mostly the people that bring me into an organization aren't really looking at those videos and things when I'm online talking about those things on social, the rest of the company is. And so like for them to see who I am and know that like, okay, this guy seems all right. I feel like he gets it. And I'm talking about things like your employee experience drives your operational outcomes. It does. They're intrinsically linked. The way I got into it is I was in customer experience work. I was actually in patient experience work in hospitals, in a cancer hospital. And when I would trace back the root causes of issues that the patients were experiencing, I would find that the employees were experiencing something very similar. And so like it's impacting your customer outcome, it's impacting your capacity, your quality, all these things. And so what most HR professionals usually talk about is like a fluffy topic, like, oh, our employees got to be happy and then they're more productive, but they don't really talk about the business link. So I can tell employees, hey, I'm here to make your life easier. I don't want it to be harder than it needs to be because, hey, C-suite, here's what this is impacting on your bottom line.
Right. What do you think is the difference between coaching, consulting, and mentoring?
I think consulting, wraps those two things together. The coaching and mentoring. So a consultant, when an organization brings a consultant in, they expect somebody that is a subject matter expert, that is adding expertise that the internal team does not have and isn't really practical for them to have. You specialize for a reason. A specialist isn't very useful over the long term unless that specialization is really important to the organization. Like, there's a reason why I have a beginning and end point planned out for my client engagements. I don't work with somebody for 5 years. If I do, I'm not doing my job. I usually work with somebody for like 2 quarters, and then it's a phase out. And I see them every 90 days, or sometimes I'll pick up a coaching client and meet with them monthly or something like that. But for the most part, I intend to. I don't want to get in, get out, get paid, but I want to drive results, teach them how to fish, and then let them run it on their own, because I've done my job and taught them how to do the thing to overcome the type of challenge that I specialize in. So like that, I think, is a mentor, somebody that's been there, done the thing, can help you see it from not a wiser perspective, but just a more experienced perspective, and be that person to help give you a better perspective on the issue. A coach, in my mind, is somebody that can help create tension between where you are and where you want to be. So a coach shouldn't always be mentoring. They shouldn't always just be saying, hey, I experienced this issue, and when I experienced this issue, this is what I did. That's more of a mentor. A coach needs to equip you with the ability to do it yourself. They're not just talking at you and giving. They're forcing your brain to do the work.
Yep. Well, that's what's interesting, because sometimes you'll get the objection, right? Because somebody say, am I getting a consultant or am I getting a coach? And to me, it seems, at least from my experience, is that more people are familiar with consultants, but they're not really familiar as well with the coaching industry. But even taking a look, for example, I looked at your website before the podcast. I think Matrix Global did a study, and they were talking about the benefits of coaching specifically, not consulting, coaching in their industry and going into that company. And for you, has anybody asked you really, so, from your services, how is coaching different?
How does my coaching differ from other coaches?
How does your coaching different from others? And also, are most people that come to you already familiar with the idea of a business coach? Not like an athletic coach, right? Because everyone, they understand that. But from a business standpoint, to me, it seems that there's a little bit more education that has to be done versus a consultant. They say everybody understands. Okay, you're a consultant, you're coming in, you're the expert, you're going to solve an issue.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny because when I first started this, I'm a little bit more comfortable with the term consultant now, but when I first launched Wayforward, I was really uncomfortable with calling myself a consultant. And I'll get to your coach question. I haven't forgotten it, but I want to distinguish this because where I came from, I was the chief executive of a facility. We had about 600 employees, and I was there to turn the place around. And when I got there, in the desk drawers in my drive files, like there was a report from, I won't throw them under the bus, but one of the big name national consulting agencies. And I looked into the finances and I looked at the price tag, and it was a $280,000 report that I was holding in my hand. And essentially that report said the problem that you guys hired us to come in and assess does exist. And they paid almost $300,000 to this consulting firm to come in and tell them that the problem they hired them for is real. Like, of course it is.
Of course it is.
We know that there's a problem. That's why we hired you.
That's why we hired you.
So no root cause analysis, no explanation. Like this big, massive report, all these statistics and stuff. All these smoke and mirrors to say that there is a problem. No analysis of why this problem is happening. No recommendations on what to do about it. Just measurement. Like one of the 5 things they should have been doing was done. And so that was really my introduction. I had seen lots of consultants over the years, but that was really my introduction to there's a big systemic problem in this organization that is causing a web of them, a rat's nest of problems, all interwoven with each other. And and this company spent a lot of money to bring in a consultant to produce zero value, nothing more than they had before the consultant even set foot on site. And so I really didn't want to call myself a consultant, because in my mind, that's what a consultant was: somebody that came in, charged a lot of money, and didn't add any value.
Yeah.
And so I told you I was going to come back to your problem or your question, and I forgot. So how does my coaching differ? So what I do with my coaching is I generally don't lead with coaching. It would be rare for me to come into a client and start coaching right off the bat. I pretty much always get involved with an organization, starting with the employee experience assessment, understanding the root causes of what the barriers are in the organization that are causing the problem that they hired me to come in and help them understand better and fix. And if coaching is a needed part of that, and the leadership team is open to coaching, then that may be part of the action plan. I have a client right now where I'm coaching 2 of the C-suite members because they're embroiled in conflict that is years in the making, and they're driving a lot of the other issues in the organization. And they both want to get better. They just need some help. So I generally don't start off coaching somebody unless I have a really strong understanding of what's going on in the organization, what all the moving parts are, so I'm more of an embedded coach, like a coaching officer almost in the organization for a dedicated period of time, rather than, okay, Nick hired me to be his coach. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what distinguishes it.
What do you think, what you've seen from your clients and just in the industry in general, who you serve, what are some of the main challenges that are coming up? Is there anything that's just common that you're I'm seeing this time and time again and needs to be addressed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the reasons for the masterclass in recruitment and retention. Turnover has been probably 40-50% of the reasons that a company has brought myself into an organization. I see the job market softening a little bit. People are getting more hesitant to leave. We've seen interest rates rising. We've seen M&A activity slow down. Those kinds of things trickle into the workforces over time. I think M&A was a big thing until interest rates really skyrocketed lately.
They were low forever. Yeah.
When a company is, when a capital firm is looking to acquire an organization, there's been a lot of wisdom gained in the past 10, 20 years from, a lot of these capital firms to say okay, this firm might look good on paper, but from a talent perspective, it might be a powder keg. They might be ready to fall apart at the seams. We need somebody to go in and understand what's truly occurring in this organization that accounting doesn't see. And that's really been, I think that's the big driver. It's these turnover, low morale, systemic performance issues, interdepartmental conflict, those kinds of things that are not just, hey, Nick and Dustin are jerks or Nick and Dustin aren't performing. There's a lot of people that are experiencing this issue within our workforce, and it's impacting our bottom line. Finance has a very difficult time, no pun intended, but accounting for the indirect costs of dysfunction and disruption within the way that the systems of the organization are planned. And if you don't spend time on that front line and you don't objectively look at the whole picture of the human systems, you're not going to understand the extent to which that's hitting your capacity, your customer satisfaction, your quality metrics, those things, your maintenance effectiveness, whatever those metrics are. And I'm kind of using manufacturing lingo, but those same things apply in healthcare and software. It's hard for the leadership team and it's hard for finance to see how those things function in the field. And so that's really what my business has been about.
Mm-hmm. So one answer or possible solution to some of that could be firm culture, right? Mm-hmm. Culture, I think, is very important. And let's just say, hypothetically, right? So if I was a prospective client and I came to you and said, we're performing, but it's just our top performers, middle managers, everyone in my organization, we just our values aren't aligned. Even though we think we're doing well, we know long term, the short term it's fine, but long term we're not seeing things the same way. How would you address with a potential client culture in their firm or company?
It's funny. Culture is one of those words that like I try to avoid because there's a lot of people
Tell
out
me
there
why.
working on culture, and culture means very different things to all sorts of different people. And I think that's been one of the struggles of the HR industry is like the things that they care about are important and have business impacts, but a lot of HR people don't connect them back to the hard science of the business. Like they talk about culture, they talk about burnout, these things that, sound kind of fluffy and, like they're wearing their heart on their sleeve, but they're unable to articulate to their peers in the executive team why those things matter to the business more so than just like it's the right thing to do or some other reason that, again, feels fluffy. So, so culture, like I would define culture as just the way that we do things. And you mentioned core values, and core values are actually hugely important. They don't feel important when most people talk about them because they talk about them in this like fluffy way, like, oh, we're going to do a mission statement and we're going to have core values. And,
Right.
and it's like,
Yeah.
am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Do whatever you want.
Okay. All right. I was gonna, and so like when they talk about that, like
YouTube don't hate us.
a serious business person would be like, F off. Like,
Right.
I'm in mergers and acquisitions. I don't talk about culture.
Yeah.
But like it's this intangible driver that people have a tough time connecting back to the business. And so like people don't take it seriously when a lot of people talk about it. But culture being the way that we do things, and it's when you talk about core values are objective, observable behaviors that employees can use to make decisions in the absence of leadership presence. And a lot of companies I work with, the leadership team is continually, like almost on a daily basis, getting dragged into these day-to-day troubleshooting, tactical things that they shouldn't be involved in. The leadership team should be looking at the market, looking at strategy, looking at, interacting with the board, talking to customers. Like the leadership teams...
More macro.
More macro, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. High-level stuff.
Right.
They are of very little... They should be, in a high-performing organization, of very little use to day-to-day operations. And they should be helping to make sure that the organization understands the macro. And so like a lot of times in an organization, the communication is backwards. That the frontline employees are asking leadership what to do and how to do it, and leadership's telling them. And instead, leadership should be telling them why we're doing what we're doing, what we need to accomplish in the long term, and why that is in the context of the market and the strategy and those things. The frontline employees are so much closer to the actual work.
Exactly.
They see things coming a mile away that we would walk headlong into from the C-suite level, and they should be telling us how to do that. So leadership is the what we're doing and why. Employees should be telling us how to get it done. And like a nurse at the bedside should be telling the hospital administrator how this actually functions in the field. A steel worker working with molten metal should be telling the boardroom how to actually get
Right.
this done and why we're having the quality issues in the metal. Nobody wants me telling them how to do their metalworking, how to do their patient care. I don't know how to do that. Even if I'm a hospital CEO who's a doctor or used to be a nurse or whatever the case might be, I am so far removed from that and I've been out of the game too long. I don't see how my plans actually function in the field. Mm-hmm. So like there's a reason why we use sports analogies and military analogies and these kinds of things in business, like because in those circumstances in sports and the military, you have really strong, really healthy, correctly structured communication back and forth
Of
between.
course. And just the discipline too is on a whole nother level.
Yeah, totally.
Do you so let's talk like so even books on leadership or other podcasts, like is there anybody who is like, if you want to call them like a thought leader or a personality that you follow that, like you said, the military, for example, there's a guy, pretty hard, mental toughness guy, but David Goggins, I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins.
I know Goggins.
Is there anybody that like any books you've read recently or anything that you're like, you resonate with a certain individual?
Oh, totally. It depends on the topic. That like what and why. Simon Sinek is great when it comes to defining the why and helping leaders communicate that to the rest of their organization. I think from like an individual like coaching and development perspective, and I actually just got one of my coaching clients who came out of an employee experience assessment this book, but Extreme Ownership. Jocko Willink is
Jocko.
ex-Special Forces guy. I actually when I was at American Brass, the director of the casting department that like literally was dealing with like 30,000 pounds of molten metal at any given time. He served in Jocko's unit as the sharpshooter.
Oh, that's cool.
So just like some of the conversations that we were able to have about, ownership and the mindset when it came to special forces. And I didn't feel good about using this in any of my branding, but so Mike is the guy's name. When we were working together, he told me at one point, he goes, "You're like the special forces of HR." And like I had a moment where I don't have any military background, so like I didn't feel right about using it. But I had a moment where I was like, that would be a really cool angle for the brand. But
no, that is cool though. I mean, I thought that sounded cool right away. But
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't serve either, I'd kind of look at that and be like, all right, I gotta
Yeah.
sit and think.
Sure, yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
sit down and know my place here.
Yeah.
I'm a civilian coach. We have there is nothing that is going to get anybody blown up that I deal with.
Well, my cousin just enlisted and he's now in basic training in Fort Jackson. So we just had a whole thing where, before he left, we got the family together and there's something just super special. I respect anybody who wants to go into, the military specifically. It's just, there's a lot of tough stuff in the world, a lot of problems and things that, we have to face. And leadership is not always just in business. I mean, it's political, it's all different aspects. And that's what's nice, even on the podcast now, having a bunch of different guests on from all different industries, having it a leadership focused podcast, it all goes back to the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is just, how do you lead people? How do you have a vision, right? How do you articulate that vision? How do you get other people to want to be on your bus?
Yeah.
And it's going to X destination. Here's how we're going to get there. And that's what brings me to, being the founder of your company, entrepreneurship. How did you know, or maybe you didn't know, maybe you had to learn it? Because I think some people are born with it, the skill, and some people, it's like nature, nurture. How did you know that entrepreneurship was the path for you?
How did I know? I think I had a great example. My father is a doctor, and he when I was in middle school, he left corporate employment and opened his own practice. So I think being in 7th grade and doing my homework at in one of the back rooms at his office when he first bought the practice, and he was going through those first couple of years of startup, just getting to see that growing up, I think that really helped. But I think I've always identified with like the rugged individualism and just being prepared for anything and owning things. And just it was funny because being a psychology major in undergrad, you learn this concept in industrial organizational psychology about your circle of control. And it's funny, if you want to limit stress, you want to also limit your circle of control. Don't worry about the stuff that you don't have any control over. But as I went through my career, I realized slowly that there is so rarely a situation in business that you don't have any control over. There is almost never nothing you can do about a circumstance. And being in HR, I observed a lot of like defeatist attitude. And like, oh, there's nothing we can do, or oh, that's all the regulations say. It's it's not illegal, therefore we can do nothing, and that just never sit well with me. And so I think just wanting to, I see things and I want to make them better, and I see how they could be better, and I want to help, and that annoys some people. Nobody wants you to meddle in their stuff when everything's working fine for them and they're happy the way it is. But when there are client organizations who are like, we could be better. Either we're dealing with a challenge and we're not in a good place and we need help, or we're good at this and we like the kinds of stuff that I work on, but we need more horsepower. We're good, but we want to be better. Those are kind of the two buckets my clients fall into. Like, we're really struggling, we need help digging out, or we're good and we want to be better. And so I just see these things and I can't really help myself. I'm just wired that way to like want to do the thing. And so like this allows me to only work with organizations that want or need help in what I happen to be good at. Like if I was in-house, it's really dependent on how much does this leadership team want to change? How much better do they want to get? How much do they want to empower the internal organization? And I've been really lucky to have been in the right place at the right time a number of times in my career to really expand my skill set, expand my view, be part of things like mergers and acquisitions, be part of things like launching new divisions. So I've had all these strategic moments where I was lucky enough to be in the room, and I have enough experience to help these clients. So I do what I do because I want to work with organizations that have that mindset that we got to get better or we want to get better, and I'm here to do that. So it's like an opportunity thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
no, I think so.
I'm just kind of wired this way, and this opens the doors to let me do that.
Yeah. Earlier you talked about assessments. Do you have your own assessment, or do you use like a specific assessment that you give to clients, like DISC or whatever some of the other ones?
Well, when I do coaching engagements, I use the Myers-Briggs, and there's a lot of debate in the psychological community about the Myers-Briggs. But I've used DISC, I've used Hogan, I've used 360, I've used the Big Five. There's so many assessments out there, and from my standpoint, when you have the time to work one-on-one with a client, Myers-Briggs is one of the most time-consuming ones to do the assessment and to go through the report. But it has the largest actionable, practical impact because it deals with how we handle conflict. It deals with how we function under stress. It deals with all these very nuanced things. Whereas with this, you get your little report, and not that it's wrong, but I put 21 of my employees at American Brass through the Six Sigma black belts. Mm-hmm. Six Sigma is, I think, my most valuable academic accolade of all my degrees. My Six Sigma black belts, the most valuable thing I use every day. But I put them through it, and the entity that we did the training through wanted to do DISC assessments at the outset with all the 21 of them. And I was like, they're all production managers. I have a pretty good idea of where everybody's going to end up. I don't think this is going to be super valuable. And so 20 out of 21 of them ended up as a high D in the DISC. I was like, I told you.
Holy crap,
and what have we learned from this? Nothing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It has its place in certain teams, but there's just not a lot of nuance to it. So yeah, I use Myers-Briggs in my coaching, but so the assessment that I talk about, it's really that systematization of my process that I've used internally when I've been in leadership roles in organizations in-house in the past. And so what I do is I come into an organization a lot of times after they've done an employee engagement survey, and they're left with more questions than answers from the survey. It can kind of tell them where their issues might be, topic-wise, but again, like the consulting firm I was talking about earlier, no root cause analysis, not telling them what to do about it, not telling them why these things are happening, or specifically what the problem is. So, you might know you have communication issues, but you have no idea what those are. And as a leadership team, you might end up in an argument because you're like, we communicate a ton. What do you mean we have communication issues?
Yeah.
So then that's why companies end up, you hear a lot of stories about, oh, we did this engagement survey and nothing happened. They didn't take any action. Nothing came of it. So I'll come in a lot of the times when they need a deeper dive. And so what I do is an interview-based process. I use something called psychodynamic interviewing. And I work mostly with mid-sized firms that are a few hundred employees. So I'm not interviewing everybody. That would take forever. But I'm interviewing a representative sample of the workforce or the division or department in a larger company that has the issue. And I've worked hard with the University of Buffalo Management School and their Department of Data Analytics to build a model that basically every sentence in my interview notes becomes a data point in a data model.
Oh,
so I'm
yeah.
interviewing these employees, and it's a very qualitative, it's a conversation like you and I are having, but then the notes that I'm taking get input into this, and so there's thousands of data points, all tagged by title, department, that kind of thing, and analyzed for the themes and patterns that emerge from all that, and for the causes within those topics, and then so that FaceTime, that one-on-one FaceTime with a sample of employees, an objective sample, and I put work in it in the front end of the engagement to make sure that they trust me, they understand what's going on, they know that nothing's going to get tied back to them. They can be very forthcoming in the interviews, and for the most part, many people are. And then I'm able to present a very objective landscape of the current state of the organization from the workforce perspective to the leadership team in a way they've never had it before. So there's the core competencies, like the great things about the organization, the things that get their employees up in the morning, the reason that they work there rather than someplace else. And then there's the barriers, the impediments, the stuff that makes employees' lives harder than it needs to be and gets in the way of them accomplishing what's expected of them. And those form the basis of the action plan that we implement over the next quarter, the protecting the good stuff into the future, making sure we double down on it and make sure it stays part of the way the company operates, and eliminating the issues from the way that they function.
What do you do if somebody, like what I tell everybody is for me, like growth mindset and learning about this stuff, like senior year of college, I have a whole thing where I was sharing with people where, I don't know if you were like this in college, but I was, like your typical party kid.
You don't want to know what I was like in college. I was on the rugby team,
okay,
if that gives you any idea.
Yeah. I mean, I tell everybody, I was a typical party kid. And then like senior year of college, I started my first business and I started learning about like, being an entrepreneur, and things are different. You gotta make sacrifices, like work-life balance. In the beginning, there really isn't. There's work-life choices, and I think they have consequences. You got to work hard. You got to say no a lot of the time unless certain things, are in alignment with your goals. And I had this whole thing happen to me where my brain just rewired, where I said, everything I want to do, the people I associate with, the tasks that I'm doing, is it either helping me get to where I want to be, or is it holding me down? Like anchors in sales, which one is it?
Sure. So I like that analogy. I've never heard that.
Yeah, I think, for people, for example, some people are anchors and some people are sales. And you got to, I think you're a product of your environment. That's a big thing.
Yeah, you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Spend the most amount of time with, right? So all of that stuff, that's been a big difference in my life. And just, I always want to grow. I don't really believe in stagnation. I think you're either growing or dying, because some people, they might say everything's great. I don't always like hearing that, because that might be true, but I want your opinion on this before I get to my thought, because this just jogged in my memory. If somebody says, everything is great, or my business is, smooth, is like slowly going well, I know that they're not growing, because there's always another challenge when you're growing. It's probably a bigger challenge than the one you just embraced. It always gets bigger and bigger, but you can't grow without challenges. So what do you think when somebody says to you, well, just everything's going great and everything's perfect?
Yeah. You're right. I have these moments actually in the interviews that I just described with the employees. It's hard for people to if you've known me for all of 5 minutes, and then, I'm asking you these deep questions about, what could be, what can we do better in your workplace?
Right.
There's some people who they're just wired to say, everything's okay. And I'm like, you've worked here for 5 years, and you've never seen
everything's okay.
Anything that could be better?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Come on, you're shitting me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like from an employee standpoint, they're just nervous to share. But like from an entrepreneurship standpoint or an executive leadership, like I've had clients all over the country in all kinds of different industries, and I have never sat down with a senior executive that did not have some barrier to where they wanted to be. And maybe they didn't have this clearest idea about where they wanted to go in the future, but for them to say everything's fine, like, you wouldn't have called me.
You wouldn't have called.
So maybe my sample's biased, because I'm working with companies mostly that, they have a particular challenge. They need, somebody else in their corner. They need more horsepower to overcome. I mean, just yesterday I sat down with a group of business owners, and they challenged me when I introduced myself to tell me, what the biggest challenge was in my business. It wasn't hard, because I know exactly what it is. And if you don't know exactly what it is, then that's your first step to growing your business. You got to figure out what you need to do, what's holding you back. I mean, I think it can be a pride thing. It can be tough for people to admit that everything's not hunky-dory.
Yeah.
But you can't be neutral. Your industry's moving, things are changing. There is no business that is just in this static state. Like that's one of the things that I've worked with several businesses now. Smaller private businesses with 100 employees, big ones with thousands of employees, whose industries are changing, whether it's through regulation or technology advancement, consumer preferences. Those things change really rapidly, and you have to look ahead. Even me, what people were interested 3 years ago when I started this business, what was impacting businesses then and what's impacting them now. Like I talked about the M&A activity drying up. That's one example of many things that are changing. And like, I have to think about what's important to my clients. I spend time, like the Buffalo Business First just had an awards for the top manufacturers in Western New York. And I'm like, it's on my to-do list to reach out to those manufacturers, not as a sales pitch, but just to sit down with their executives and say, what's itching you right now? How did you win these awards? How did you win best workforce development? How did you win most innovative? How did you win most sustainable? What efforts have you put in place? What's working well for you? What's not? Like, I have to keep my ear to the ground. I have to know what their pulse is, because if I stop keeping abreast and I stop innovating, then I'm going to be outdated real quick. My methods might need to change.
Exactly. AI is a prime example of that. I mean, do you use any AI tools for your business?
I do a little bit. I think that I have a colleague and friend who has made the most interesting. He's in the most interesting career transitions. Have you ever heard of the band Panic at the Disco?
No, I haven't. No.
You're a little younger than me. In the early 2000s, there was a band called Panic at the Disco, and he was their manager. They were like a pop punk band.
Okay.
I think they did. Never mind. He was their manager, and he is now like one of the top like machine learning and AI experts for like the defense industry. So wow. Like huge career swing.
From pop punk to that.
Right, yeah. But he's just one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And to see him, you'd think he's still in the music industry. It's funny, like he sits down with like the Joint Chiefs and he has a grill, like a gold grill on his teeth. And but he's just one of the smartest men that I've ever met.
Oh, that's cool.
Anywhere. And I've known him for 20 years. Brilliant dude. Hi, Shane. I hope you're watching this. He works in this, and he does a lot of analogies to tell people like, look, like AI is, it's very shiny right now, but it's not realistic for most companies. And so first of all, I can't use things like ChatGPT because my client book is confidential. I work with companies that are dealing with serious internal issues, and I do not air their dirty laundry.
Yep.
It's just, they wouldn't work with me.
You would almost
if I
need
did.
like a private language model.
Exactly. So like I can't put, I have a closed on my server, data protected, two-factor authentication, all that software that I developed with UB that I put their information into. And a lot of my clients have me sign NDAs at the outset. So I can't put their stuff out into a public language model that would put their information out there.
Right, and spit out something.
Yeah. But I do have so like there's things like machine learning, there's things like data analytics, there's things like, efficiency and automation that a lot of companies call AI or think are AI. And like that, I think, is where most companies are going, is your data integrity and your data management are like, we got to walk before we can run. You can't use AI if your data's a mess. And I've worked with regional legacy manufacturers that are like, just getting their employee records into the cloud. Yeah. And I've worked with defense contractors whose names you would recognize, who are dealing with the same kind of data integrity issues. And those are those are the things that come out of my employee experience assessments. Like, we're messing up because we can't make good decisions because our data integrity is messed up. Because when we get data from this other division or department, it's a mess. And so these are cultural things. These are decision-making things that frontline employees are dealing with that leaders don't really account for when they plan the systems. So so to answer your question, no, I don't use any AI, but I do use data analytics. I do use things like machine learning. Like that's like what most small, medium-sized businesses have access to as far as like a resource standpoint and an ability standpoint. Because like garbage in, garbage out. If you've got
Exactly.
bad data integrity and data management practices within your organization, then you can't use AI because it can't function.
Right on.
It's like your average guy. If you try and drive an Aston Martin or an F1 car
You're gonna crash it.
off the lot, you're gonna crash it. You're
finished.
You're gonna mess the transmission up.
Yeah.
We can't drive those things.
Right.
Like, can you go get a Corvette that's got an automatic transmission? Sure, and it works and it's beautiful and it's fast and it does everything we need it to do, but like,
Yep.
yeah, don't go buy a Ferrari.
Oh my God. Have you ever worked in the like financial services industry or did work for
Yes.
them? Okay,
Yeah.
so
for clients, yes.
For clients.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a few times over.
okay,
Yeah.
because here's a point I want to bring up. I didn't read the article. This was something where just before a meeting, scrolling through my phone, and I saw a headline. Okay, that was talking about might have been Jamie Dimon, with J.P. Morgan or one of these other guys that were saying that AI is really going to impact that industry. Because for me, and I'll tell you a little background. I got my degree from Canisius. I got a degree in finance. I originally was thinking at the time whether corporate banking or maybe even investment banking. Investment banking is one of those, as a young guy, a glorious career where you can make a lot of money, but you're working 80, 90 hours a week.
Yeah.
But what do they do all day? They
Analyze.
PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets. That's all they do. And the
Oh yeah,
senior
as a junior associate.
as
yeah.
a junior associate,
Yes.
and the senior bankers, right, take that information and then they present it to the clients. But what they're saying now is, if that was like, at least for finance majors, that was the holy grail thing to do, they're now saying with artificial intelligence
Oh, totally.
in a second. So now I think the article, it might have been could have been Business Insider. I don't remember exactly what the article was. I just saw the headline, but it was saying in there that approximately in the next 5 years or something, 2/3 of junior analysts won't be needed anymore. And in the finance field, that was just the thing. If you got a finance degree, if you got into investment banking, that was like the holy grail thing. So AI has significant threats. That's why I
Oh,
wanted to ask you if
absolutely.
you worked in the industry.
Yes.
Or for your clients.
So it does. And I think that's from a workforce development standpoint. Like that's what you need to be thinking about. There's been a huge push for us, for millennials, Gen Z, your baby boomer generation, your Gen X generation, the parents of those two generations. There was a huge push to go to college because that was important 50 years ago. I think that college doesn't really have the value proposition that it used to, and you're seeing that.
Glad you brought this up.
You're seeing you saw the explosion of higher education institutions, and the market was oversaturated. So you're seeing, especially here in Buffalo, we had the strangest, incredibly oversaturated higher education market where like you've literally got 3 schools in the same 3-4 blocks. Like you've got, Canisius and Medina and Damon and whatnot. And like the fact that those institutions lasted as long as they did is super surprising because nothing that they were doing, and it's kind of embarrassing. Like as a Canisius alum, like it's kind of embarrassing that they have a business school. And like I kind of I rip on Canisius a lot, and a lot of alums are frustrated with them. I don't think anybody's as vocal about it as I am, but whatever. But like as a business person, when you operate in a saturated market, you have 3 options available to you. Like you have to do it entirely different than anybody else is. You have to do it significantly better than anybody else is, or you need to acquire your competition.
Yeah.
Like you need a completely different model, you need a vast quality disparity, or you need to buy everybody else.
I say
doing
something similar. First, better, or different.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, yeah.
And we're like, the timeline's constricted because we're all here now, right? Like we've all showed up with our colleges, and we have 97,000 colleges within 2 square miles here in Buffalo. Like we've got 2 colleges for every 1 citizen of Western New York.
Yes.
Like, all right, everybody's gonna do what? I don't know what they think, but like, so like, thankfully now you see some colleges closing because they're insolvent, and I don't know how they survived financially as long as they did. You don't see anybody like. Nobody's invented a drastically different, revolutionary educational model that I know of Like they're all basically doing the same thing for the same general set of degrees.
Yes.
And nobody's really differentiating themselves on quality. If anything, it's been a race to the bottom to lower costs, to fire as many teachers, professors as we can, to deliver as little value for as many dollars as we can. So nobody's like when I went to Canisius, they were talking about going Ivy League, and then they totally reversed and said, no, we're gonna do the Walmart version of education. And it's been really frustrating to see that, because like what business strategy tells us, we're not doing any of those things, and we're expecting to excel.
Yep.
Like, and we're teaching students business on top of it, or we're claiming to teach students business on top of it. So like, I think that was just maybe my soapbox, but
No, I
this
hear
is why
you,
people
'cause-
invite me on podcasts, because I say the dangerous shit.
No, but like I'll say, like I have a lot of relationships at Canisius. It's my alma
I
mater
love
as
Canisius.
well. And
Just this morning, I had coffee with my mentor.
Oh, yeah, I love-
the
absolutely.
head of the psychology department when I was
Yeah.
there, and it fed my soul. And she challenges me, and like still after all these years, and she's well past
Yeah.
retired, and like she still asks me questions that leave me scratching my head.
Oh, for sure. But I think, though, and tell me if you agree with this, I mean, I will say that I think the value, especially being in Buffalo, going to Canisius, the alumni network. I mean, the amount of introductions that I've gotten from that has been amazing. But I do think today, not saying education is wrong, but I think it's dependent on what your major is. I think nowadays, too, with like social media, so many other ways to make money, unless you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, where you need a certain specification, I don't know if it's necessarily needed anymore with all the different ways that you can go out and make money.
I mean, even doctors, I'd say, like, unless you're going to go on to become a surgeon, and even that's got some risks, because like robotic surgery is getting more and more prevalent. Some amazing things I saw happen at the hospitals where I led, they're 3D printing patients' bodies and organs so surgeons can practice the surgery the night before. Like amazing advances in technology.
Yeah.
But like your primary care physician, I don't know if you go, your annual physical, he's looking stuff
got it
up
next week.
He's looking stuff up on his iPad. Like how can
know.
any human being how could you possibly keep track of all the drugs, all the ailments that we can have? Like, it's memorization. Like, that's what med school has always been, is like you are memorizing a giant amount of information. And now that like at our fingertips, we have something that can do that for us. Like, it's decision making, it's nuance. It's like you need to look for careers that, like you said, the analysts, 2/3 of analysts are going away because a PowerPoint presentation can scour the internet. Like an AI can scour the internet for all available public information the same way a junior analyst would, and then put together a presentation on it and format it and make it actually look pretty good.
Yep.
Like you need to move away from things that are rote memorization, facts, anything that can be looked up. We're in a society where like knowing a lot of things isn't all that useful, but making decisions based on facts, that is now useful. Mm-hmm. Like, so you need to be able to work with people. You need to be able, like, the bedside manner of a physician is going to become more and more important because it's going to be a service industry more than it's going to be an expertise industry. Your junior analysts, if you're in finance, you got to figure out a way to, how do I get on this train of harnessing this technology, not fighting it, but using it to be to the best advantage of my clients, my customers, and make this something valuable and add to it. Where is my value at as a human being? I need to add to what this technology can do.
Yep. Well, that's why I make the argument for coaching all the time, because I think now it's like, people aren't bad at the technical aspect of their job. They know how to do it, but how you want to advance, how you want to get promoted, and especially with AI now that can basically do your job for you in certain circumstances, it's the interpersonal skills. It is your communication, it's strategic planning, it's your power base, your network. Learning that art or skill of, persuasion, sales, things of this nature, that's something that I don't think AI can replace. And that's why I think for us, like being coaches, sure, now some people are creating chatbots, certain coaches saying that, like, let's say John Jones is a coach. Now he creates an AI bot, and 24/7 you can ask John Jones any question, it will spit something out. But there's always going to be that human element that is needed, right? And I don't think the AI is going to be able to, well, who knows how much it's advancing, but at least in the near term, that's why I think coaching is really a recession-resistant industry, due to the fact that that interpersonal skills and communication and building up your network, that's something I don't think AI can replace. I don't know your thoughts on that, but
My thoughts on that are, it's funny because I'm actually like thinking through this in real time as we're talking. I talked earlier about how, people who use like hard science as part of the business, people who do things that I am incapable of doing. Some people think I'm, talking smack towards finance or, things like that. When I talked earlier about how they don't account for, you have a planned system from the senior leadership and it doesn't function that way in the field.
They're not accounting for that, yeah.
They're not accounting for the disruption. They're not accounting for how does it impact us when that doesn't actually work the way that we thought it would. And I'm not talking smack because they do something that I am not very good at. Like for me to sit down and analyze a P&L, analyze financial statements, like that takes me longer than other things. I can do it. I need to be able to do it. If I couldn't, then I wouldn't be very good at my job. But like that's not my forte. I don't look at a financial statement and immediately know it the way a finance professional would. I'm like sitting there line by line like an old man. But I come to the same conclusion. It just takes me a little bit longer. But so like coaches, and like I've done the same thing. So like I have a strongman competition in the fall, and so I went to ChatGPT. I said, "Here's where I am with all my different events, all my lifts. Here's the weights that I can do in those events. Here's where I want to be for this competition. Write me a training program. I'm going to train this many times a week. I expected these are my rest days. Like I gave it all my height, my weight, all those things." And it spit me out a good training program, but it was rigorous because the time frame was a little tight. And I know that I'm going to falter along the way. And so a good coach in the age of AI is the coaches that will survive alongside their AI counterparts will be the ones who will account for that, have a plan for that, know how to help their clients spring back from that. And like, that's really what I do. Like an organization, like there's smart people in charge. Nobody has built a company with hundreds of employees that competes in this day and age that is not a smart leadership team.
No
like
question.
I don't work with idiots. I work with smart people that I respect and I become friends with and I love. But they have plans that get disrupted. And I'm the one who helps them understand that disruption. And so like a good coach is going to know that this is not going to work out the way that my plan says it is. Even if I wrote the plan, even if the client's gung-ho about it. And
man plans and God laughs, right?
Exactly. What was it? Helmut von
Story of my
Goethe?
life.
Helmut von Goethe from the Austrian Empire. And now a lot of people attribute it to like Eisenhower and stuff, but it wasn't him. It was in like the 1700s. And he says like battle plans never survive contact with the enemy. And it's, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. Yep. The plans go awry. I tell them why they're going awry and what to do about it. And luckily, like in business, we have time. Yeah. Nobody's shooting at us. Luckily, we've got a couple weeks to sort it out, put it back on course, and check and adjust along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, like with this AI stuff, I mean, AI versus a coach, would you rather have a screen hold you accountable or would you rather have a human being hold you accountable?
Well, a screen can't hold you accountable.
Correct.
You're holding yourself accountable. You're the one opening the screen. You're the one deciding to do anything about it.
Exactly.
It's not making you uncomfortable at all. It's not saying, hey, your employees still hate you. Yep. Your colleagues are still frustrated with you. You're still fat. Like whatever it is, your computer can't make you feel bad about yourself. Only other people can.
Oh yeah. Last question for you. Getting back to the point when I was talking earlier about, like growth mindset and how that stuff senior year of college for me, it changed my mind on a lot of things. I changed my network of people that I was around. My whole mindset shifted. I started, instead of, and I don't want this to sound bad, but I think, I always cared about other people and I still do. But at the time I was realizing I was caring enough about other people that I wasn't even thinking enough about myself. And I think it gets to that point that as a leader, you have to develop yourself first to become the person you want to be before you have the right and privilege to lead others. Mm-hmm. That's something that has always been big for me. So the last question to leave this podcast with here is, what do you do when you might know that somebody needs coaching. You can see it, but they come to you and they say, like it's ego, or if it's pride, they might say, well, I don't need a coach. What would you say to that?
That's funny because I fired my first client ever in 3 years just 2 months ago. Well, first of all, I'll say it sounds like you reached this conclusion about the people you surround yourself with a little bit earlier than I did. It's probably in my mid-20s when I made a similar move and said, okay, these are just drinking buddies. Like their anchor's not sales.
That was my thing. Yeah.
And I will say that the pendulum comes back around. And there's a point, I think, when you get, timelines might be different, but I feel like when you hit 40, you get to this point where you're like, the sales the sales can be anchors sometimes. We can have people in our lives that are sales 90% of the time, and they can be the same people that we deliberately, intentionally, blow off steam with and things like that. And I think it has to be that like 90-10.
I see that.
It can't be people that are primarily drinking buddies, primarily, all we do is go golfing or whatever. It has to be people that actually add to your life more often than not. But they can be the same people that you goof off with. And
happens at the club all the time,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everybody, but a little bit.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the same. Sometimes it's, hey, we're out drinking and cavorting and being goofballs and pretending that we're 20 again, and but we're like making plans as we do it.
But you know what I mean.
But you actually follow through on those plans in the morning. You don't wake up hungover and say, okay,
exactly,
that was silly.
Yeah.
You actually like, all right, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Because they're good plans, because we're smart people. But to your question about repeat the question for me. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to cut this part out.
No, it's okay. No, it's all right. No. I just said, so what would you do if somebody says to you?
Yes.
I don't need coaching. I don't need any of this.
Ago. Yeah. So I think I learned that when it's a sole owner, there is always, in every single client engagement that I've had, there's always been work that the leadership team has to do. There's always been something that the leadership team is doing, that it's a behavior that's getting modeled by the rest of the organization, or there's something dysfunctional that they're doing that's impacting their own bottom line. And usually when those people bring me in, they're willing to be open to that, and they're willing to do the work. I recently had a client, I took on a network of private healthcare practices, and it was a sole owner. And the sole owner was the one that brought me in. So that, kind of gave me a good feeling. Like, they'd had extraordinarily high turnover among their providers. And I came in, I did my employee experience assessment, I found the answer, and really, like, the vast majority of the issues were being driven by this one person, by the owner. And they reacted very poorly to feedback. Probably the worst reaction to feedback that I'd ever seen from somebody in an executive role. And I've worked with some doozies in my career.
Yeah.
But, just very unhealthy reaction to feedback, not open to even the smallest discussion on that kind of thing. And so I said to them, and it was the one and only time where I didn't provide an action plan with my assessments. And that's usually part of my value proposition. And I've sacrificed, half the payment from that client. I say, you don't have to pay me for the second half of this. There was the initial deposit, but which was going to be a big check. But I was like, I don't have an action plan for you. Like, it's you. Like, you got to do this work, and you don't want to, and you have not been willing to accept this feedback. You got to have a coach. You got to be coachable.
Exactly.
And you got to want to be better. And this person didn't want to be better at all. They didn't want to see how they were contributing to the issues. And like, it was very unanimous. Like, I had dozens of people telling me the same stuff, the same doctors leaving the practice saying like the same things over and over. And it was very clear connections. And I tried to walk her through that, like just the micromanagement, the incivility, the kinds of stuff that was going on. And she didn't want to hear it. And that's okay. That's fine. And maybe that'll sink in. Maybe she'll change. Maybe she won't. I don't know. But I said, I'm here. Like, I'm not saying no, but like, I can't coach you until you tell me that you want to be coached, you want to change. And it's everything that you're responding to me with is telling me that you don't want to change. So like, it's an internal thing. It's an individual thing. You got to want to be better. And we all have to. I have a coach. I have multiple coaches. I've worked really hard to surround myself with a network of like peer mentorship in addition to my formal executive coach. And that's important to me because we all have blind spots. Michael Jordan had a coach, for gosh sakes. Like the best that ever was had a coach.
Well, your coach is who gave me the introduction to you.
Yes.
Alan.
Yeah.
So, he'd be great to have on. He'd be fun.
Oh, Alan's brilliant.
Yeah.
Get him while he's still here before he moves to Brazil.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, man, this has been so fun. I think we talked about a lot of things that are just super important. And I think you and I can agree, too, that it's just, if we need anything in this world today, just with all the nonsense, it's leadership. I think we're just, depending on what that definition is to certain people, it can be different, but it's just, we need people who, walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah, and don't listen to the chatter.
Don't listen to the chatter.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Social media, websites, whatever.
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Dustin Snyder. So my website is wayforward.work. Unfortunately, wayforward.com was taken by some defunct IT company that doesn't seem to have updated their website in years, but IT of all things. But yeah, so wayforward.work. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm at the Buffalo Club having a cigar.
100%.
Yeah.
And before I forget, which thank you so much, the whiskey was fantastic. Give a shout out again to
High West. Yeah, some of the best whiskey makers out there right now.
Awesome, good stuff. Dustin, thanks so much for coming on.
This was fun. Thank you, Nick.
Awesome. All right, guys, take care.